Okay, Peter, well, today I just wanted to talk about the upcoming fight on Saturday, or the upcoming exhibition on Saturday. I need to correct myself there, between Mike Tyson and Roy Jones Jr. So this is set to take place at the Staples Center in Los Angeles with no crowd on this Saturday, the 28th of November. As I said, they're scheduled to box 8 2-minute rounds with 12-ounce gloves, no head guards, no vest. So it's a real strange kettle of fish here. And we don't know really quite what to make of it, but we've got to kind of look, I suppose, at what we know, how we've got here, and then what we think is going to happen. The other reason is, why are we watching this? And I think there's the key. What do we think is going to happen? We always used to watch Tyson because you never knew what was going to happen with that guy. We had the Evander Holyfield ear biting, trying to break Franz Bota's arm, pushing the referee away, against Luis Saravasi, threatening to eat Lennox Lewis's children, even when he didn't have any children. But, Tyson was always unpredictable, and it was that unpredictability that kept us tuning in, even when he wasn't the amazing, great, dominating fighter that we knew in the late 80s. So that's maybe the reason we're tuning in. But how did we get here? So interestingly enough, on Sunday, it was 34 years to the day since Mike Tyson won the heavyweight title from Trevor Berbick, 1986. So Tyson won his first heavyweight title in 1986 and reigned until 1990 with the upset with Buster Douglas. So, and then, obviously we know with the imprisonment and then coming out and then regaining portions of the title and then running into Holyfield and so on, up until, really he was active up until 2005 when, he had his last fight and walked away from the sport, said he wasn't interested anymore. So Jones came up. Interestingly enough, if you say Tyson won his first heavyweight title in 1986 on the 22nd of November, Jones won his first heavyweight title in 2003. So Jones came along, even though he's only 3 years younger than Tyson, because Tyson is now 54 and Jones is now 51. Jones, obviously, Tyson was the youngest heavyweight champion in history. Jones matured at a more, acceptable rate. He was first made his debut at middleweight, won more titles at middleweight and super middleweight. And light heavyweight, eventually moving up, as I said, in 2003 to dethrone John Ruiz to win a version of the WBA title. So, that was kind of Jones's high point. Then he dropped back down to light heavy, was beaten by Antonio Tarver. So there was a lot of talk of this fight happening in 2003 when Jones moved up. Now, Tyson had been beaten in 2002 by Lewis, which maybe ended his claims to, be the best on the planet. He was comprehensively beaten by Lennox Lewis, but 2003, he was still floating around. He was one of the top heavyweights. Jones dethroned Ruiz, and these guys are similar size. That's going to be, I think, the surprising thing when we see them box is that, Jones is actually going to be coming from middleweight. Jones is going to be the taller guy at 5'11". Tyson is 5'10". Jones's reach is 74 inches. Tyson's reach is 71 inches. So the physical disparity is not going to be there if you think it's an ex-middleweight champ against an ex-heavyweight champ. You're not going to see that. So this fight was talked about and mooted in 2003 because they were similar sizes. It was going to be exciting. Nothing ever came of it. And then Tyson in 2004 was beaten by Danny Williams, which kind of put paid to his aspirations at the top level. And he bumped along for a little bit and then retired. As I say, Jones dropped down to heavyweight, back to light heavyweight to fight Antonio Tarver, and then was iced in the second fight with Tarver. And it kind of, in a way, that was the end of the Jones legend. The high point was the dethroning Ruiz, and he just looked unassailable through that whole period from the first middleweight titles up to that heavyweight title. And then, he's carried on. His last competitive boxing match was 2 years ago at cruiserweight. He kind of established himself at cruiserweight. There were a few more stoppages, but there were a lot more wins than there were stoppages. So, he's been very active, and he's never had any time off. He's always been boxing throughout. All right, he's been semi-retired for the last 2 years, hasn't had a competitive boxing match, but you often see him, he's training Chris Eubank Jr. now. So you often see him in the gym training next to Eubank Jr. and looking very, very sharp. Tyson obviously went away after that loss to Kevin McBride in 2005, said he'd had enough, put on quite a bit of weight, but then seemed to kind of redeem himself, regular on the sort of, chat circuit as it is now. And then in the last year has totally transformed his physique and, looks fantastic. And we've seen these little pads of Tyson on the pads, on the body belt where he's looked phenomenal. And then, as you know, and then all this came about because Tyson a little while ago said, look, I would fight anyone for a few million quid, and somebody mooted this idea. Then he was going to fight Evander Holyfield, he was going to fight various names, and then all of a sudden Jones came into the picture, and it's Tyson Jones. It was set for September 12th this year, and I think what happened is they just didn't realize what they had, because this just broke the internet when they said, Tyson Jones are going to fight. and it was going to go out on Triller. They were going to get a few $1 million. It was all good. And I think somebody obviously came along and said, listen, you don't know what you've got here. This is just, the perfect lockdown fight. This is the perfect, the interest is intense. You've got to capitalize on this. We need to get this out worldwide. It's a global event. You need somebody controlling this, making the maximum amount of money out of it. So they put the event back, and here we are, November the 28th. And that's where we're going to see this exhibition. And this is the key point. It is an exhibition. The California State Athletic Commission has licensed it as an exhibition, so there's no judges in attendance. The referee will have a lower standard of intervention. So unusually enough, in a fight, a referee may well be saying to them, look, will you calm down? You're not trying to knock each other out, just calm it down. Obviously you don't see that in a regular fight. So the referee will be there. I mean, exhibitions, again, to go on to this, champions very often used to box exhibitions. Before widespread YouTube, widespread television, people wanted to see their heroes. Muhammad Ali was probably the last, I'd say, champion to box a lot of exhibitions. He would very often box exhibitions in between his fights, just so his fans could see him for a few rounds in the ring. And Tyson did this as well. Tyson boxed a few exhibitions in his prime, so he would come on an undercard and box, say, a 4-round exhibition. Interestingly enough, Tyson last boxed an exhibition in 2006, the year after he retired. He boxed it with a really good fighter called Corey Sanders, who you famously remember knocked out Vladimir Klitschko. Sanders was also retired. They boxed a 4-round exhibition. And do you know what, Peter? This is the weird thing. Nobody was particularly interested. It wasn't a big crowd. It was just like, there you go, have a little run out, boys. And, end of story. I think Tyson was wearing a T-shirt. He looked quite flabby. Nobody was interested. And now the whole world is going to tune into this exhibition with Jones. But having said there's no scoring and they're not supposed to be knocking each other out, they have said in the prelims that it's a fight. They're really going to go for it, and we don't know what's going to happen. Jones has said, he's worried about being killed and all this sort of stuff. So they're treating it in the way that you run up to a fight and you try and generate interest in that same sort of way, and they've definitely succeeded. But an interesting thing about this is the WBC have kind of got involved. And yes, it's an exhibition. Yes, there's no crowds. Yes, there's no judges. The WBC are going to be doing remote judging. So they've recruited 3 former WBC champions, including Vinny Pazina. They're going to score the fight over the 8 rounds. And the winner will be presented with a special belt the WBC have made. They seem to be in the business of minting these one-off belts. This is called a Frontline Battle Belt. It will be emblazoned with Black Lives Matter on the front, and it will be presented to whoever the WBC remote judges think is the winner of that fight. So, there's lots of strange things going on. Interestingly enough as well, almost like a proper fight, they both agreed to drug testing, with the exception of marijuana. So they're not being tested for marijuana, I presume, because Tyson owns a marijuana farm. So, you'd take that as read. So a very strange event that we're going into. And it's like celebrity boxing. On the undercard, you've got Jake Paul boxing, a former NBA star. You've got a UFC star, a heavyweight in a boxing match. You've got Baddy Jack, obviously a proper legitimate ex-world champion boxing, and so you've got UFC, NBA, you've got YouTube stars on there. So it's a real event, and it just makes me think that why has this captured the imagination so much? And I think chatting to some people I know in the music industry, they were saying it's all nostalgia. Lockdown has brought about nostalgia. We haven't been buying and listening to new bands. We've been in lockdown and we've been listening to, Fleetwood Mac and Oasis and all the old bands. That this nostalgia, lockdown nostalgia, is I think what's fueling this. We all want to kind of take a look back, see what these guys can do, and so here we are. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be exciting. What are we actually going to see? Again, I don't know. I think although Tyson has looked fantastic in these small clips on the pads, we've not seen any footage of sparring. And also you've got to look at the reality. It looks like he's wound the clock back. He looks like, all these pictures have been popping up on my Facebook page recently. Mike Tyson, in the 80s, Mike Tyson in the 2020s. So this photo was late 80s. This photo is 2020. And there's not a massive amount of difference for 40 years, although reality is probably about 31 years, in the way they look. But let's remember when Danny Williams beat Tyson in 2004. Jim McDonald famously said, "Look, Tyson is a 3-round fighter, Danny. If you get out of the first 3 rounds, you will take him." And the first 3 rounds were torrid, and then Danny did take him, and that was So Tyson has been a 3-round fighter, I would say, for the last 20 years. So what has he done in the intervening period that's going to boost him back up, apart from training hard in the last 6 months to a year? Well, that's what's really going to show in the ring, because, you might look great, but he hasn't lived well. He's had his marijuana farm. He's very fond of that. And, he doesn't look like he's been training up until recently. Jones, on the other hand, has been regularly training and competing the whole time. So, they're going to come together. I've got to favour Jones in this match, although I think Tyson is going to be dangerous early. If he does come with the intention of knocking out Jones, I think his only chance of doing it is probably in round 1, maybe the start of round 2. After that, I see it going all Jones. Remember, these are 2-minute rounds at Tyson's request, so he's got that, more of that breather time. But yeah, I really think, I think as David Hayes said, it's going to come down to who's been living the best in the last 20 years, and that is undoubtedly Jones. But what we're actually going to see, I don't know. Are they just going to move around and show some skills? And if neither is that bothered about being knocked out, in other words, if they know they're not going to be knocked out, they will exhibit those skills. They'll be able to do a few more things, try a few more things. But if they are really worried about being KO'd, then you expect Jones to cover up, move, use his speed, use his fleet of foot early, and just try and gas Tyson out, which is going to happen after Mike's thrown quite a few combinations, if he does, for the first few rounds. So in terms of scoring, if it goes to scoring, I expect Jones to be a winner, because by the end of it, I expect Jones to be kind of pot shot from the outside. If there is going to be a stoppage, it's probably going to be Tyson in round 1, or the next round, or Jones could stop him late. That's the conventional boxing wisdom if you apply their respective records and styles. But as I say, what you're going to get with this, nobody really knows. You will have to tune in to find out. My personal feeling on it, why shouldn't they do it? It's a bit of fun. Where this is going to go, again, we don't know. This is supposed to be Tyson's initial Legends League. It's like I say, if you look at the undercard, it's like celebrity boxing. So it's not real boxing, it's not proper boxing, it's not hugely competitive boxing. But I think it will be interesting and exciting. We would watch Agassi and Sampras do an exhibition, even though they're nothing like they were. And I think we're going to watch these guys, as long as it's done properly. It'll be interesting. Where he goes with this, I don't know. Tyson came out yesterday saying he would box exhibitions with the leading heavyweights of the time, with the Tyson Fury, with the Anthony Joshua. That seems like a bit of a daft idea to me, but he's only saying exhibitions. He's not saying, he's going to actually box them properly. And maybe that's just to whet the appetite for this fight, because a lot of it is being sold on the nostalgia that Tyson can come back and compete at the top level, which is obviously an absolute impossibility. So I think sit back, get your popcorn, enjoy it for what it is. It's celebrity boxing, and I hope and I think it will probably be quite a bit of fun. And you never quite know what's going to happen. But I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't go the whole 8 rounds, but not in the sense that somebody gets knocked out like one of Mike's old knockouts when people are flying around the ring like cartoon characters. Maybe somebody will retire with a sore shoulder, or but we'll see. But it's breaking the internet. It's a global event. They've managed to pull this off. I think it's lockdown nostalgia, and fair play to them. So that's coming up on Saturday. And Peter, I just wanted to mention, only 82 days to Rumble Live. And we're going to break some records with this show as well. We had 10,000 viewers on the live stream in 103 countries on the last show on 31st of October. This one is going to be bigger and better. I've got fighters contacting me all the time, want to get on this show. Really excited about it. It's 82 days, 13th of February, 2021 for our big celebrity boxing Rumble. So that's going to be great. Thanks a lot.